Re-Zero, Volume 5, Chapter 2, Part 3. Events in Motion in Rem's Decision. Once the plan had been hashed out, things moved quickly. In short order, Subaru and Rem were headed toward the front gate of the Crush villa with their luggage. There was already a vehicle awaiting them, stripped of all ornamentation to lighten it, with a single red-skinned land dragon drawing it. Wilhelm was holding the beast's reins as he awaited their arrival. When he noticed Subaru and Rem rushing over, the aged man bowed deeply. "This is the fastest land dragon that this house is able to lend under these circumstances. Even so, I dearly regret that it is inferior to the long-range dragons employed by the Marquis." With Rem taking the reins, Subaru stood beside her and looked at Wilhelm. "I'm immensely grateful you're lending me anything at all. I'd love to say I'll return it for sure, but..." His tone dropped off at the end. Wilhelm was the only one to see off Subaru and Rem at the front gate. They had said their farewells to Crush and Ferris at the entry hall of the mansion. The least he could do was politely return the dragon carriage later as a final parting of ways. "In my position, I can but obey Lady Crush's decision. Once you depart for the mansion, my master and your master will no doubt become mutual enemies. This dragon carriage will serve as a parting gift for the half-fulfilled treatment and the sword instruction." "But that's... I don't think they said one word about that when we left the mansion." At the very least, the farewell from master and vassal suited them almost too well. "I pray your efforts shall be valiant, and that you will strive to make your efforts proudly, without shame to your soul. With Lady Crush being this nice to you, you better make up with Lady Amelia in a hurry. Now get going already!" That last sentence probably left the strongest impression. There hadn't been any hint of the kind consideration he felt from Wilhelm, but... "I, too, serve Lady Crush, so I am somewhat familiar with my master's way of thinking. Incidentally, when did you start working for her?" "I believe it is just over half a year now." "Hey, that's way shorter than I thought. From how you talked about it, I thought you'd been master and servant for years and years." Rem was piling luggage onto the dragon carriage while Subaru and Wilhelm traded words in that manner. Rem took the reins again and gave the land dragon's snout a gentle stroke. "Understand? Then do as I say. That's it. Good boy. Good boy. Rem, how's it looking?" "He seems to have a slightly wild disposition, but I've instructed him who is on top, so there should be no trouble. I believe he will obey my commands." Right. Gotta establish the hierarchy. You really know how to crack the whip, huh?" As a result of Rem's conversation with the land dragon, they seemed to be getting along. Given the fact that they'd be racing together for over a day's worth of time, the relationship between driver and land dragon was crucial. Rem discussed their plan. "Taking a detour across the plains to avoid the fog, we should pass through 2 villages on our way to the Marquise's lands. We can likely procure and switch to another dragon carriage at a village named Hanumas near the border." "Incidentally, how long till we get to Hanumas?" "It will likely take 14 to 15 hours. If we run the dragon carriage into the ground after we switch, we might be able to arrive at the fiefdom in another half a day." Subaru scratched his head, fighting back his words of dismay before bowing his head to Wilhelm. "Thanks for everything. It's a shame to leave practice half finished like this. I believe I have taught you the most important things. Beyond this, if you desire to increase your skill at the sword, there's no better way than to continue swinging one. May you stay in good health." Wilhelm offered his hand. Subaru accepted it, and the two exchanged a good hard shake. Rem took over the driver's seat as Subaru entered the small carriage. Poking his head out the window, he gave one last wave to Wilhelm, who was seeing them off from the front gate. "Well, we're heading out. If fate allows it, I'd love to spend some time together again." "If you enjoy being welcomed with blows for a wooden sword, come back any time." Wilhelm gave a gentlemanly smile as he saw Subaru and Rem with a very fitting joke. The land dragon neighed and began gently picking up speed. The carriage accelerated further, leaving the Krusch villa farther and farther behind them. The figure at the front gate kept his head bowed until Subaru could no longer see him. They headed downhill, passing the guardhouse that formed the entrance to the nobles' district, heading straight down the main street to the gate that linked the royal capital to the highway outside that was their destination. Thanks to the land dragon's blessing, the vibrations in Subaru's ear were exceedingly soft. He nervously looked out the small window, unable to bear the sense of urgency inside him. Leaving the streets of the royal capital behind, his field of vision was dominated by green grassland, blue sky, and nothing else. Since Rem was concentrating on driving, he couldn't speak to her, so there was nothing for him to do while in transit. Inside the carriage, Subaru sank into a sea of thought. Krusch had declared that they could not lend a dragon carriage for long-range use. Accordingly, the feel of the passenger seat was much shoddier. It was probably for rushing servants from place to place. He'd entered and left the Krusch residence in the blink of an eye. The fact that the Duchess had kindly lent them a single dragon carriage upon his departure left Subaru in a tangle of complicated thoughts that were difficult to put into words. Only the night before, he judged her as strict but not indifferent. The back and forth between his departure had only added to the complexity. What he did understand was why many people wanted to converse with her. No doubt Amelia would have to work hard to build up a network of personal connections as Krusch had. That was a necessary hardship for her, yet unnecessary ones burdened Amelia as well. That's why I need to get over there and fast. Of course, these were political questions and a matter of connections between people of privilege. Subaru did not have such an inflated view of himself as to think he would be able to help with those issues. He knew there would be difficult problems where he would be nothing but dead weight, but it wasn't in him to use his powerlessness as a reason to cast aside someone he cared about when she was in trouble. If he poured his heart and soul into it, he was certain that he could overcome these obstacles. Subaru Natsuki possessed that power. Nothing will work unless I'm with her. Now she'll understand that. It was unfounded certainty. No, it was nothing but hope. Amelia had fallen into peril. If he was there, galloping to her rescue, somehow everything would work out. It was his slender, flickering hope, in danger of being snuffed out by the wind. He wanted to prove his worth. He needed to. If Amelia was in distress, Subaru would save her. No, that's how it had to be. Subaru needed Amelia to fall into peril so that he could discover his own value, show others that he had worth. That's right. It's no good if I'm not with her. For sure. In the back of his mind was the incredibly lovely girl with silver hair. Her smiling face was enveloped by an amorphous darkness, buried by malice attempting to quench her sublime spirit. With that vision in his mind, Subaru closed his eyes and bit his lip. In the carriage, he silently let the time pass, alone. With the exception of Rem in the driver's seat, he was isolated in that place, unable to sense the presence of any other. And he never noticed the faint twisting of his lips. Late that day, instead of Hana Moss where they had planned to switch carriages, It rested at a stopover town ahead of it named Fleur. Rem had suggested it as the sun was setting, just before night began to fall. Traveling by night will increase the probability of encountering bandits and demon beasts. I'm also concerned about passing close to the fog, so I believe it's best to lodge at a nearby inn tonight. How long is it to the halfway point at Hanamas? We can't just rush the rest of the way there. It would take until midnight to arrive at Hanamas from here. We might not be able to get an inn, and procuring a dragon carriage is difficult in the middle of the night, so... That's true. So it's not like we can just get there and everything will work out then. Rem had been thinking while Subaru was mulling things over. Naturally, she'd made her proposal with much deeper consideration than Subaru's. Though he was irritated at having to stop, he accepted Rem's suggestion. So let's get an inn here in Fleur and head out first thing in the morning. That'll give the land dragon some rest and maybe cut down on the time needed to find a carriage in Hanamas. Yes, if we leave early in the morning and things go well in Hanamas midway, we just might be able to make it to the mansion before nightfall tomorrow. As Rem replied, her voice was filled with relief that Subaru had accepted her proposal without complaint. Fortunately, their hope of finding an inn upon arrival in Fleur was granted. They entrusted the land dragon to the stable adjoining the inn, filled their bellies with an exceedingly crude evening meal, bathed briefly, and dove into bed so that they could rise immediately at daybreak. But when Subaru thought of Amelia, his sense of urgency and impatience drove off all drowsiness. Can't sleep. Desperately trying to doze off, all he ended up doing was blindly changing positions in bed over and over. After all, he'd spent quite some time at Roswell's mansion and Crucia's villa, the finest depths of luxury that world had to offer. The hard bed of a backwater inn made it hard for him to sleep. Of course, given that he wanted to wake up as early in the morning as possible, curses for time and his own body welled up in his chest. He didn't need more time to think. What he needed was an opportunity to link the conclusions drawn in his mind to tangible actions. Thus, all he yearned for was the morning sun. How many times had he glared at the ceiling and the backs of his eyelids? How many times had he turned in bed? A sound slid into his eardrums, a knock at the doorway, then someone hesitantly opened the door. Subaru, may I come in? When he lifted his head and looked over, he saw Rem's upper body leaning into the room. She'd slipped out of the servant's outfit he was used to and had changed into a thin blue nightgown he'd seen at some point before. Rem, realizing Subaru was awake, looked relieved as she headed toward the bed. Subaru asked her, "What's wrong? If you're here to say you feel lonely and can't sleep by yourself, it's a hard day for it. If I was a little calmer, I'd have a really good laugh at that. But right now..." That proposal makes my heart flutter, but no, I could not sleep, so I wanted to talk a little. I see. You too, then. Well, nothing we can do about that, huh? Subaru crawled out of bed as Rem timidly sat down by his side. Feeling like their shoulders were close enough to touch, he turned his attention to her pale face and opened his mouth. I feel bad that you've had to take care of me ever since we left the mansion, Rem. Please, do not apologize for that. I do not think of anything as hardship if it is for your sake. Her strong shake of her head prickled at Subaru's conscience. He knew that was what Rem would say. Ever since the demon beast uproar, she'd been his ally through thick and thin. Ironically, she was probably the one who most understood his worth. Finding out by telepathy must have made you way more worried about the mansion than me. And here you are worrying about me on top of that. We still don't know that anything's happened, right? Rem nodded stiffly in reply to his question and lowered her eyes. Don't worry about it. I'm sure something rough has happened, but she's not cute enough to fold that easily. We'll get back soon enough. I'll manage to take care of it somehow." Subaru smiled with unwarranted cheerfulness, trying to lessen even a little the burden weighing Rem down. He wanted to make her feel at ease. As was typical for him, Subaru's claims were baseless. It wasn't as if he had some brilliant, tangible plan to overcome difficult obstacles. Anyone ought to have doubted a declaration like that. And yet... "Yes, I believe you, Subaru." Rem smiled pleasantly at him with relief, as if 10,000 cavalrymen had come galloping to her aid. Realizing that her smile had captivated him, Subaru's face reddened as he averted his gaze. He'd said something embarrassing, and her acceptance of it had been equally shameless. Subaru immediately turned his back to her without continuing. He didn't know what Rem must have thought of him. His breath caught when he suddenly felt the weight and warmth of her body against him. "Miss Rem? I wonder, why are you hugging me like this?" The soft sensation against his back and her breath made Subaru unconsciously slip into a far more formal form of address. "Because I want to." The answer she gave in response, rich with meaning, carried a warmth that set off alarm bells in his heart. Behind Subaru, still sitting on the bed, Rem had her arms around him as if to cover him up. Her feminine softness, sweet scent, and arms around him drenched Subaru's entire body in warmth. This feeling is... Subaru, sensing it from head to toe, tilted his head when he suddenly realized that the warmth Rem was imparting was something apart from body heat, greatly resembling something he'd felt over the past several days. In reply to Subaru's misgivings, Rem maintained the contact and opened her mouth. "I'm healing your gait, the same as Master Felix did for you, Subaru. After all, I had several opportunities to watch you while standing right beside you. Compared to Master Felix, perhaps I cannot do much more than put you at ease a little. But..." "Right, treatment, yes. I see. Yes. Exactly, huh?" Feeling embarrassed at his impure delusions, Subaru glossed things over with a hollow laugh. He felt Rem smile slightly behind him as the strength of the mana flowing into him increased. "Whoa, incredible. This feels way better than Ferris's stuff ramming into me." "Thank you very much, but that assessment is unfair to Master Felix." "Not at all. I'm totally serious. It feels good and makes me feel sleepy." Maybe the effect of the treatment was inferior to Ferris's, but Rem had far greater consideration for her patient. He felt like he was immersed in warm water, wrapped in softness. He felt comfortable, relaxed, and drowsy, so he did not catch Rem's faint whisper. "That is most likely the difference between our feelings towards you, Subaru." His head was slipping down when Rem brought her lips close to his ear. "It's all right to fall asleep. I'll lay you down in bed properly, cover you with blankets, and leave after I've had my fill of watching you sleep. I wasn't worried about my belly being out in the open, and that's quite a line at the end. But when you're working so hard, how can I fall asleep in the middle of it, Rem?" It was petty stubbornness, but he didn't want to come off as rude after everything she'd done. He sensed Rem beaming as he felt her hands touch his head. The warmth coming from her palms increased, making his eyelids even heavier. "Oh, crap. Why am I mean, it's hard for you, too, but..." Rem, why are you doing this for me? He rubbed his eyes, irrationally resisting the drowsiness, continuing to speak to hold on to his consciousness. Rem, why so much for me? Because I want to. I do not need any other reason. He let go of his mind before her words really sank in. Even so, he heard Rem reply, I want. That part was important. That was probably the starting point for all the thoughts enveloping Subaru. What would happen when he returned to the mansion and reunited with Amelia? He was full of anxiety. She'll yell at me at first, won't she? Subaru's eyes fell as he shook his head. As he wobbled, Rem's arms gently embraced him to provide support. It'll be all right, Subaru. You're a wonderful person. With time and a proper meeting, if you tell her how you feel, I'm sure she'll understand. Is that so? Guess I am for you to think like this about me. Sound grew distant. Now, his mind began to withdraw from reality. The comfortable drowsiness coursed through him like a curse, his eyes closing to become a cage around his mind. Just before his consciousness completely slipped away from reality, Subaru thought he felt the faint touch of Rem's lips against his neck. She said, So please keep me in a little corner of your thoughts, and don't go anywhere else, Subaru. Subaru no longer had the mental strength to reply to the seemingly pleading whisper as his mind gently sank into the darkness. What woke Subaru up was the feeling of hot sun rays burning his eyelids. He remained lying in bed as he absent-mindedly lifted a hand to block out the sun. The light entering through the room's large window was strong, with him covered in bed up to his shoulders. It made him so hot that it was hard to sleep. He indulged in that feeling for several long seconds before enough blood flowed into his half-asleep head for him to realize. The sun's up? Subaru threw off his blankets, leaped off the bed, and sprinted to the window. When he pushed it open, a cool breeze flowed into the room, and he gazed dumbfoundedly at the sun watching him from high in the sky. That sight struck him with the terrible truth. No way. At a time like this. Am I an idiot? Having arrived at the despairing conclusion he'd overslept, he rushed with all haste to Rem's bedroom next door in the inn. Subaru knocked furiously on the door before throwing it open. Rem, wake up! We massively overslept! Cursing the fact that he'd slept nearly half the day away, he scanned the room in desperation. Anyway, he had to get Rem up so that they could resume their march. Or so he had thought. Rem? The room was completely empty. There was no bulge on the bed. The sheets were untouched. Subaru had a bad feeling about the lack of evidence that anyone had been in the bed at all. The room held no warmth from a human presence. Unable to even see any luggage, he ran out of the room to the inn's front desk. The innkeeper who had greeted him and Rem the previous evening was sitting at the desk, smiling sociably when he noticed the boy. My, good morning. It would seem you slept very well last night. Subaru did not return the innkeeper's courtesy, slamming his fist onto the desk to drive his question home. What happened to the blue-haired girl who came here with me? The innkeeper reacted with surprise. Seeing Subaru's expression, he raised his hands in an attempt to mollify him. Dear guest, please calm down. You will disturb the other patrons. Answer me! Where is she? Where did Rem go? Your companion, who came with you on the dragon carriage last night? That's not an answer! Cowed by Subaru's threatening demeanor, the innkeeper practically shouted his reply. Hear me out. She left during the night. She left on the same dragon carriage you came in on. She paid for your stay and left a bag for you on the way out. She actually paid enough for you to lodge here for several days, so there's no problem whatsoever. No problem, you say? The innkeeper had tried to take care not to provoke Subaru, but the words he chose enraged him further. There damn well is a problem. Raising an angry voice, Subaru slammed his arm against the bag on top of the counter and clutched his head. Welling up inside him was distrust, doubt, anger, sadness. The irrational feelings wrestled with one another in his head as Subaru tore at his black hair and looked up to the sky. Rem, what the hell are you thinking? The fact that even the person who knew him best had failed to understand him weighed down on him as he wailed in despair. To Subaru, by the time you read this letter, you will no doubt be quite angry with me. I will not ask you to forgive me for leaving you to head for the manor. However, please understand. It is dangerous to bring you to the mansion as you are now. I'm thinking not only of the state of the mansion, but the state of your body, Subaru. Therefore, please wait for me here in Fleur Village. I'll be back for you when everything is taken care of. I've left behind all the money. I've already paid the innkeeper thoroughly, so you can stay for several days without any trouble. Please take care of yourself, and please wait until I return. I beg you. From your Rem.